While confronted with an impasse over the U.S. debt limit, Biden meets with Indo-Pacific leaders at the G7 summit. Hiroshima, on the sidelines of the Group of Seven meeting on Saturday, President Joe Biden sought to galvanize regional cooperation against China, despite a stalemate in Washington on how to keep the United States from defaulting. Biden began his third day in Japan at the annual meeting of the world's most powerful democracies, with a briefing from staff on the latest fits and starts in the showdown over how to raise the federal debt limit, hoping to avert an outcome that would rattle the global economy and benefit Beijing. On Saturday, the president squeezed in meetings intended at confronting China's buildup across the Indo-Pacific, notably with the so-called Quad partnership of the United States, Australia, Japan, and India. The Quad members were supposed to meet in Sydney next week, but they postponed their meeting for the margins of the G7 to allow Biden to return to Washington early on Sunday, in the hopes of reaching an agreement to raise the debt ceiling before the United States runs out of funds to pay its obligations. The abbreviated tour has emphasized a fundamental tension that has shaped Biden's presidency. Domestic dramas continue to obstruct his efforts to convey to the world that the United States is recovering the role of global leadership. The president has mainly avoided the spotlight during the summit, avoiding major public speeches and exiting Friday's leader dinner early. Instead, he's been glued to a video monitor in a room next to his hotel bedroom, where aides in Washington have been bringing him up to date on the debt limit negotiations. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan confirmed that international leaders had pressed Biden on the debt ceiling impasse in Washington. But according to Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, while there is considerable curiosity in how the president will resolve a domestic conflict with international repercussions, there is no fear, at least not yet. It's not a hair-on-fire situation, she explained. On the fringes of the meeting, Biden met with Australian Prime Minister Antony Albanese in lieu of a planned visit to his nation for the Quad summit later this week. The trip will be rescheduled, according to U.S. sources, and Biden has invited Albanese to Washington for a state visit as a consolation for the change-up. Biden apologized for missing Australia, but Albanese explained the situation. "I would have done exactly the same thing," he said, adding, "I'm very much looking forward to the state visit." The leaders signed an agreement to deepen their collaboration on creating raw materials used in clean energy technology, as both strive to diversify supply away from China. In addition, they released a joint statement identifying new areas of collaboration in space, trade, and military. In addition, the president was sending Secretary of State Antony Blinken to replace his spot at a Pacific Island Nations summit in Papua New Guinea on Monday. That presidential stop was also canceled in order to get Biden back to Washington as soon as possible. Biden's visit would have been the country's first by an American president. The United States and China are aggressively courting Pacific Island nations as the two heavyweights compete for influence in areas of the world where shipping lanes are critical. Biden and other world leaders were expected to meet in Hiroshima to agree on a shared framework for boosting their own economic resilience, recognizing that high levels of trade with China have become more of a risk than an opportunity for mature economies. According to Sullivan, the G7 leaders would recognize that we do seek to cooperate with China on matters of mutual interest. In addition, we will seek to address our substantial concerns in a variety of areas with China. He reiterated a statement frequently used by G7 leaders. The group's goal is to de-risk, not decouple from China.